Okay, I think we are back live and things are going to work for us. Apologize for that. Jennifer Sparks here, got Brian Festa as my guest, and hopefully I can get him into the studio without having this crazy audio issue that I've been having. All right, Brian, are you there? Let me see if I got audio on you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hold on a second. Let me undo this button. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, great.
So I'm hearing my voice a little bit fading back. It might. Do you have a headphone by any chance?
Um, sort of. Just give me a minute.
I don't know if that'll help that echo. Hold on a second.
Let me see if these will work. Can you hear me with these in?
Yes, I can. It doesn't matter. I can still hear myself. Let's just talk. It'll feedback a little bit with me, but
All right. Well, hold on. I can headphone. Now say something.
all right. Testing 1 2.
Okay, now you're in my headphone. You weren't in my headphone before.
It's working. Yeah, I'm not hearing the loop. So
Okay.
I'm using a system called Video Ninja, so that's just producing all of this. So I appreciate everybody's patience, including you, Brian, with the tech stuff using Video Ninja and OBS, which is using a lot of plugins and different things to stream to multiple platforms. So every once in a while there's snafu with it. So I appreciate that, and that's sounding
Sure.
and working pretty good. So we were talking about, like previously, just about the things going on right now in current events with Bobby Kennedy is now head of HHS, and, we're just recently his statements coming out, we were both talking about that online, and I thought it was important, like, have the discussion that holding Bobby's feet to the fire, holding HHS's feet to the fire for using language like community immunity, and that kind of stuff, I think is important to keep him on his toes.
Well, I mean, as we were saying before we went live, nobody gets a free pass, right? We all love Bobby. We've worked with Bobby. We've hosted him in Connecticut multiple times. You've been there when we rallied together with Bobby Kennedy and Dell and other people like that. But and Dell's another. There's another thing we can address there because he created quite a controversy last week. I believe it was last week when he came out with a video as well, defending Bobby Kennedy and talking about how we kind of created the problem, or suggesting, it seemed to me from listening to it, that we created the problem with the MMR because people don't have natural immunity. But now maybe we do need babies or children to have the MMR. I mean, the fact that he would even suggest something like that, the fact that Bobby would even suggest something like that, to me, is just beyond the pale. I just absolutely never endorse it. I will never endorse it. I will never be telling people that is safe. Or that it's effective, because it's neither, and we know that. We've met people personally who have lost children to that shot, or who have had children suffer lifelong, debilitating mental and physical disabilities as a result of that triple toxic shot. We know that very, very well, and Dell and Bobby know it too. So anyone who knows what we know and is coming out and suggesting that people get that is just, it's nothing short of reprehensible, in my opinion. And yeah, I'll get fire for that. And they'll say, well, you're not in the position, you have to know about playing the game. Well, no, I don't play games. And maybe that's why I'd never be confirmed for a position, because I would have come right out in the Senate hearing and I would have told them that no, you don't have the information. You're all lying. You work for pharma. I am going to dismantle the CDC and the FDA. I am going to completely overhaul and maybe eliminate this childhood vaccine schedule. I would have come right out and said it. And yeah, I wouldn't have been confirmed. You're right about that. But I stay true to myself. I'm not going to say one thing to a Senate panel and then do another thing, or worse, say one thing and then do what I said to the Senate panel, but which goes against what I've been telling parents for the last 20 years. I just won't do it. I'm going to stay true to what I've always said. And if I were in that position, it would be no holds barred. And I would be their worst nightmare. And that's, again, why I will never have a position like that. Is Bobby a better politician than I am? Yeah, he sure is. But that's because I'm not a politician at all. And I never will be. Because I don't play the game, and neither does Dawn, my beloved business partner.
That's right. She certainly does not.
She says the same thing. We've talked about it recently, and she said, no, I wouldn't play the games in D.C. I have no interest in going to D.C. because I wouldn't play their games. I wouldn't play by their rules. I fight for the side of truth and righteousness, and we fight for God and for the children. We don't fight for any agenda or making concessions or backroom deals with people like Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy, I would have told him to go take a hike. I'm not making any handshake backroom deals with you. It ain't happening. It ain't happening with Susan Collins either, or Mitch McConnell or anyone else. The truth is the truth. These shots are extremely dangerous. They're deadly in many cases. To our children, and anything like that needs to be taken off the market, and Big Pharma needs to lose its liability protection. And I would have said that too in the Senate here. I mean, they would have absolutely hated me. I probably would have lost half the Republicans, never mind all the Democrats, because half the Republicans at least are in Pharma's pocket, just like the Democrats are. So that brings me to another interesting conspiracy theory, if you will, is that some people are suggesting that, hey, well, if Bobby's really going to do all the things that we have wanted him to do for so long, why in the world would they ever have confirmed him? Because surely you know that at least half, maybe more, of those Republican senators are in the pockets of Pharma, just like the Democrats are. So why did they vote for him by a margin of 52 to 48? Why did they do that if they knew he was going to dismantle the pharmaceutical industry and root out all the corruption? Why would they have confirmed him? So people are suggesting that maybe he's not going to do what we all want him to do. Now, I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because I don't have evidence that he's secretly working for Pharma. Like I said, I like Bobby. I've worked with him before. I'm not here to say that he's in there as some sort of infiltrator or some sort of evil, actor. That's not what I'm suggesting. There's another theory. The other theory is maybe they're more afraid of President Trump than they are of the pharmaceutical industry, because President Trump wanted him in there. And perhaps, maybe just perhaps, that President Trump holds even more power over these senators than Big Pharma does. And remember that Big Pharma isn't the only big in the room. There's big ag, there's big oil, there's a lot of other big special interests that are in the room, that if they didn't confirm Bobby Kennedy, Trump could have been instrumental in blocking the agendas of a lot of those other industries. And that would have been very detrimental to their special interests as well. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't think about. It's not just Pharma and that's it. That's the only issue. Either we're going to be allegiant to Pharma or we're not. Well, no, they have to do this dance because there's all these other agenda items, all these other bills they want to get passed. And if Trump stands in their way, which he very well could lobby against them. I mean, he doesn't have a vote. His vice president does if there's a tiebreaker. But he could very well, he and Vance could be very, very disruptive to those other agenda items. So perhaps it has nothing to do with Bobby. Perhaps, just hear me out, Bobby is not controlled op. Perhaps it's because they're more afraid of Trump than they are of Bobby Kennedy or excuse me, or of the pharmaceutical industry.
It's really deeply concerning how entrenched the pharma is and how much power it holds in the whole system and where we're at, the government and pharma. If we look back and think about how far we've come, just with the 1986 Vaccine Injury Act, it's a government thing that started it off with, that gave the pharmaceutical companies this ability to have liability-free products that our children have been mandated to take. And I didn't realize that Dell was coming out saying, well, now maybe people should be taking a measles vaccine.
There was a video that came. There was a video that came out last week, and he didn't say those exact words, but he said basically we created this problem. He did, which, I mean, I agree with the premise of that. I agree that, by vaccinating, we created a problem, that Mother Nature, if you will, but I say God, God had a good thing going, right?
Yeah.
God provided natural immunity, and then mothers who, when they were children had the measles would pass that immunity on to their babies, and the breast milk, I mean, it wouldn't last, obviously, throughout all childhood. It would only last when they're most vulnerable, those first, few months or even year of life. And then after that, the kids could, they would contract measles just the way the mother did when she was a child, and then they'd have the immunity, and then the girls, when they grew up, could pass it on to their babies, and so on and so forth. He's right about that. That was the system that was in place by God, and it did work perfectly, as everything that God creates does. But now he's saying, what do we do now that we don't have that anymore? Now that the mothers don't have that natural immunity to pass it on, what do we do? Is it so crazy, before you jump all over Bobby Kennedy for suggesting that people get vaccinated? Remember, it is dangerous for newborn babies to get the measles, and they're not getting the immunity from breast milk that they once did from mothers who had measles as a child. So again, maybe it's not so crazy that we're suggesting babies or that mothers get the MMR. I mean, it's just, honestly, I shut it off about halfway through because I was getting mad. So I have to be honest, I didn't listen to every last thing he said. But when I heard that part, and then I saw all the comments were jumping all over him saying, how can you say that, Dell? And all, a lot of people in the medical freedom community are outraged and actually turned against him on this. I know he's good friends with Bobby. I know he supports Bobby, but you got to put friendship aside when it comes to the truth, when it comes to protecting children, when it comes to what we know to be the truth, which is that the shots are far deadlier than the measles virus. We know that, yes, okay, is there a higher mortality rate in infants if they were to get the measles in the first, month of life or something? Yes, I do believe that's true. But in general, as far as it being a dangerous childhood illness, children did not die of the measles hardly ever. And we have information now. I saw an interview. Did you see it yesterday with Polly Tommy and Brian Hooker?
Yes.
Interviewing the parents in Texas with the measles outbreak. They claim that child was almost fully recovered from the measles, had just a couple of spots. She had pneumonia, which was a different, maybe a complication, maybe something completely different, but it was not the actual measles virus that killed that child. And that child was put on a ventilator against the parents' wishes. That child was denied vitamin A and breathing treatments against the parents' wishes by the hospital. And so what I'm hearing now, again, this is what the parents are saying. I don't have confirmation. I have not reviewed the medical records. But what I'm hearing now is that measles did not actually kill that child. So even in that case, that's being reported nationally as the first measles death. The media appears to be, surprise, surprise, lying to us about that. So
For sure. Now, one of the things that I find really interesting with all of this, so on our journey for protecting our children, because our children are at the forefront of this battle for medical freedom. They are literally right on the front lines. And one of the tactics that was used, which now like post-COVID, with the contact tracing, the locking down communities, the wanting to show your paper kind of thing, there was this wild guy in Westchester County, I can't remember the county leader's name. I was literally stunned, and then bam, COVID hit. And like all of the correlations to with this whole like kind of public health regimen, so the hospital protocol. So with this child that goes in, the mom out of she just wanted to have her checked, but she felt like she was progressing, but the fever was still presenting, and the mom got a little worried, just wanted to have her checked. She was drinking water, she was still very conscious. It wasn't, she was still getting over this, and then they bring her into this institution, and they intubate her and knock her out and refuse this child water, which what we know is like once you put people on ventilators for these respiratory illnesses, it's like a death sentence. They drugged her up. I mean, I'm not a doctor. This is my opinion based on what I'm seeing. And from all the interviews, I shout out to Polly Tommy. She just does such wonderful work. It was a really amazing interview with that family. Really heartbreaking to hear their story. But what really stuck out to me, the hospital is a really scary place. Now, I'm just going to go out there and say that. And the research that I've been doing as a journalist and private equity owning, these companies, owning these hospitals and designing these protocols. Why wasn't that child given the proper treatment? Like the other children were treated with the breathing treatments, and all the kids did just fine, and there's nothing wrong with aiding a child in breathing. Why would you intubate them? Why wouldn't you? What is this protocol, and how do we legally go after these hospitals? Are really scary. They don't want to listen to patients. It's no longer when you go into an institution like this, you are subjected to whatever it is they want to do to you. What are we going to do with this situation? That's what really upsets me. And I guess COVID really shined a light on it because it was already brewing there, these protocols that are inhumane.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying as a parent because on the one hand, if your child does appear to be, say, having trouble breathing or having some, crisis, some medical crisis, obviously you don't want to deny what could be life-saving treatment. But then on the other hand, you hear all these horror stories, and it's not every case. It's not every time a child comes in sick to the hospital, they die, obviously. But one case is one too many, right? So
absolutely, especially with something like the measles and not being vaccinated. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that the hospital like purposely did this, right? But the protocols that are set up all these protocols are designed and in place by big pharma, by think tanks, by ideologues, by people who aren't even nurses or doctors. This is decided by the hospitalist.
Yeah, and that's the problem because from a legal standpoint, with medical malpractice, the burden of proof is showing that the hospital did not follow protocols, and that's why the child died. So the burden of proof isn't showing that the hospital did something that killed the child. Even if you can show that the hospital did something that resulted in the child's death, as long as the hospital was acting within established protocols, they will not be found liable. Because death is considered something that's a known risk with any treatment or surgery or anything, right? When you sign a waiver, when you go in for any kind of surgery, because the anesthesia alone, even if you're just getting surgery on your pinky finger, right?
Yeah, true.
The anesthesia alone, they make you sign a waiver, a mile long, because they want to say that, listen, there could be a complication. It could result in death. And even if we follow all the proper protocols, you could still die. Now, on the one hand, you understand why that's in place because things do happen. Everybody's body is different. Everybody reacts differently to things like anesthesia and being cut open. Everybody has different comorbidities or no comorbidities or a lot of them. So depending on the person, there's always a chance that there could be a serious complication or death. So they're not going to rule that out. And so that's why the law has developed to say, okay, well, we're not going to charge doctors and nurses with murder every single time someone dies in a hospital. People are going to die in hospitals. People are going to die during surgery. That's going to happen. So what is going to be the standard? The standard is going to be that they deviated from established protocol. They were negligent because they didn't do what the protocol told them to do, and therefore we'll find the hospital liable in those cases. As long as they're following the established, protocol by the medical associations, by the CDC, the FDA, the AMA, as long as they're following those protocols, they'll be in the clear. So in this case, I think it would be very, very difficult. I'm not saying no lawyer should try to bring this malpractice case for this family. And honestly, I've been thinking about it, and I've been mulling it over, and I've talked to one of our other attorneys about it already, to be honest with you. But I think it's going to be nearly an impossible case unless we get a hold of those records and see that they deviated from the protocol, that, the protocol was not to put a child on a ventilator in this situation. The child's oxygen levels weren't low enough to the point where they should have. Okay, well, now maybe I've got something. With COVID, we didn't have anything because all those protocols were covered under the PrEP Act, which gave them liability because it was a covered countermeasure under an EUA. It was emergency use authorized. That's not the case with something like measles. So if we could prove that they did something that was not part of established protocol, then there would be a case against them. And I don't know, maybe they did. Maybe as bad as the protocol was, they even deviated from that protocol. And if we could prove that, then we'd have a case for those parents. So it's worth looking into. I'm not saying we're going to take the case because I'm not even in touch with them, although I'm in touch with Brian and Polly, so I could very easily probably get in touch with them if I wanted to. But I haven't even reached out yet because I think it's going to be a nearly impossible case.
Yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. That the hospital protocol, and I think about some of the hospitalists or the designers behind this with your bioethicists, and what character I specifically go to is Ezekiel Emanuel, who helped to write the Affordable Care Act and who has been very instrumental in would be designing this hospital protocol that we're seeing now. And Ezekiel Emanuel, he is a very interesting figure who has been shaping policy and working with presidents for decades. He's also connected to communities that support eugenist ideology and in that club at Davos with the World Economic Forum, and has even written papers. He's written papers where to change the Hippocratic Oath from first do no harm, that medical services and supplies and things such as that should be rationed appropriately, and that people who are above a certain age would need to, like you wouldn't be able to get life-saving care anymore. They would just be like, it's time to take you out to the pasture there, He is 75 years old. He had written this paper that I believe it's published out there. You can even look that up. I've written about this. But these people are designing this protocol. So it seems like to me it's this massive Borg of a machine that is very inhumane. And I wonder, even from an angle where, of course, a lawsuit against the hospital would do it, how could we attack that protocol from a legal standpoint without the malpractice to say, hey, what are these protocols? Why are you using them? I guess because it's best practices, it's almost like it's an impossible thing to even pick away at from where it's just such a monster. Which even brings us back to the whole Bobby and the measles thing, where the basis of his work, and even Del Bigtree with Vax, and I just stand flabbergasted. What are you talking about? This to me is like, this thing shouldn't even be on the market. It's like pre-COVID. I didn't even realize how crazy and bad it was until after COVID, that they've had these things on the market for decades and they're hurting children and nobody's doing anything to stop it, and they do their whole body of work, and I'm flabbergasted. So maybe it's just this big entwined, like,
I get it.
Take it apart.
I'm right there with you. No, I mean, listen, I'm not a doctor or a scientist. I always say that. I don't give medical advice, but in my opinion, we have, there is no vaccine that is an effective preventative or treatment, which it's used, which it can't even be used as a treatment, but they try to say that. But we don't have an effective preventative in the form of a vaccine. What we do have as an effective preventative for measles, or at least to reduce the risk of serious complications should you contract it, are a healthy diet, healthy living, things like vitamin A supplementation. That's what we have. That's what we know works. These shots don't work. And again, that's my opinion as a non-medical professional. But I've seen firsthand, not only do they not work, but I've seen firsthand the damage they can cause. And they'll try to tell you that's all been debunked. It has not been debunked. It's never been debunked. There's never been studies showing that it's safe and effective and that it doesn't cause all these complications, which they try to say they've already proven it, and they haven't. And the thing is, as far as your question about how do we attack the protocol, well, they're set in place by government agencies and private organizations like the AMA and AAP and things like that. That's the problem, is you'd have to get inside those private organizations, which are all infiltrated by basically pharma lobbyists, is what they might as well be, because they're carrying water for the pharmaceutical industry. They claim that all the protocols are based on real evidence, on studies that have been done showing these are best practices. But when you dig down into those studies, I'm quite certain you'd find that there's a lot of conflicts of interest, that they're compromised, and the people at the helm of these organizations are developing these protocols for not so pure motives, perhaps even sinister motives. There's money behind this. If you're saying you have to use a certain drug as a treatment, as a protocol in the hospital, and that drug is produced by one of the major pharmaceutical companies, as all drugs are, right? Then obviously you're going to make a lot of money for that drug company, for that manufacturer, that pharmaceutical company, because now you're mandating that drug be used in every single situation when a patient comes in with this kind of a breathing issue or whatever it is. Imagine that. Imagine having an organization or a government agency mandating that hospitals all across the United States, in some cases the world, are using a certain kind of treatment that you produce in your labs. Imagine the profits there. If there were no money to be made from any of this, then I would actually maybe believe in some of it. But because there's so much money to be made, and because the people involved in making the decisions are in many cases, for lack of a better term, in bed with the people at these pharmaceutical companies, it's hard not to be jaded and skeptical. And even if you don't have evidence of a direct conflict, if it doesn't pass the smell test, as my old tax professor used to say in law school, then you should be highly suspicious and you should probably stay away from it, right? If something smells fishy, even if you don't have proof, it's better to stay away from that altogether than to just assume that there's no ulterior motives and they're all acting just altruistically. I just don't, knowing what I know of human nature, it's hard for me to believe that. So anyway, we wanted to, I know you wanted, I don't have a ton of time left, but I know you wanted to also touch on what happened in the New York case with the Amish.
Yes, definitely. That's a very interesting case that, let's dive right into that, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about it.
So this was a community in New York State of Amish people, and particularly children, who were exempted, who were using religious exemptions to opt out of vaccinations. New York, as you know, like Connecticut, sorry, I might lose my voice a little bit, but New York, like Connecticut and California and Maine, does not allow religious exemptions for schooling, for education, when it comes to mandatory vaccinations. And so, although there is this idea that parents have religious liberty and there's a right of child rearing for the parents to determine the child rearing in, for their own families, to determine the course of it. And there's religious liberty interests, a case called Wisconsin versus Yoder that came out years ago. decades ago that was cited and was used in the argument for the plaintiffs here. We use the exact same arguments. In fact, in some places, looking at their arguments almost word for word, they use the same arguments we did in our Second Circuit appeal for the Connecticut religious exemption case. And I do want to address that for a moment, because we're personally involved in this, because the court, in denying the Amish case appeal, the Second Circuit cited the We the Patriots case over and over and over and over again. And they said, you know, we've already decided these issues in We the Patriots, and we're going to decide them the same way in your case. People said it was our fault. People who are the haters out there tried to say, well, it's because you guys set bad precedent. But wait a second. Did Brian Festa issue a decision in that case? Who issued the decision in the We the Patriots case? It was a panel of the Second Circuit who, mind you, issued a decision by a vote of 2-1. Not to say that our arguments were better, but we did get one judge on the Second Circuit to side with us. This Amish case was dismissed unanimously, for what it's worth. That's not to say we have better attorneys or a better case. It's the panel you pull, right? Whatever judges you get out of that Ninth Circuit, whatever 3-judge panel you pull, you have there could be a chance that one of them sides with you or not. We got one judge to side with us. We were not dismissed unanimously. The only reason they're citing We the Patriots as a reason to shoot down this case, the only reason they were doing that is because we came first. Our case, with the exact same arguments they were making, came before the court first. So they had already decided these issues. So by the time the Amish case got there, they had already decided the same exact legal arguments. And again, I find it funny because people are trying to attack me and saying that we made bad legal arguments. But we made the exact same arguments they made. So they're good legal arguments when, the attorneys, I'm not even going to mention names here. All right, I'm just going to be classy and not even mention names, but the famous attorneys, who are more famous than I am, when they make the arguments, they're great legal arguments. We made the same exact legal arguments, and our case was garbage. No, the Second Circuit, they had been first to court. If they had gotten in court first, the Second Circuit would have struck that case down just as easily as they did this time. And when we got there behind them, they would have used the Amish case as precedent to strike us down. It's just whoever gets there first. The bottom line is the Second Circuit has made up their mind. They're not going to find, under any circumstances with fact patterns such as these two cases, they're not going to find that it's a violation of the First Amendment, of religious liberty, of the right to child rearing, of the 14th Amendment. All of the arguments that we both made in each of our cases, the Second Circuit has already made up their mind. They're not ruling in our favor. So at this point, the only way that we're getting this overturned is the United States Supreme Court, at least with the case coming up to the Second Circuit. Now, there are other circuits in the country that might decide it differently. Do I think this case has a good chance of being taken up in the Supreme Court? Yes. Why? Your case wasn't taken up, Brian. People are saying, who might be listening, your case wasn't taken up, and you said you had the same argument, so why would the Supreme Court take up this case? Well, it still is a long shot. The Supreme Court only takes up 1% out of the 8,000 or so cases that are appealed to the Supreme Court every year. However, in this case, it's a religious community. This case is a lot more like our Milford Christian Church case in Connecticut, where we had a Christian church and school that was threatened with closure. The daycare and the preschool, to be exact, were threatened with closure by the state because they were allowing religious exemptions. In this case, the Amish community, their school was fined. I heard something like $100,000 or $150,000 worth of fines by the state of New York because they were allowing religious exemptions. So in both cases, you have a religious school that is being attacked by the state. So it's church versus state, or state versus church more properly, because they are allowing religious exemptions, because they are exercising their religious freedom. So the court, this particular Supreme Court, has been very favorable to religious liberty, especially when it's a case of the state attacking religion, the state being hostile to religion. We saw that all going back to the Masterpiece Cake Shop case in Colorado with the baker who didn't want to bake the wedding cake, and the state commission there was hostile. They expressed hostility toward them. We saw this in the Maine school choice case, where Maine allows vouchers for private secular schools, but doesn't allow parents to use vouchers for private religious schools. The Supreme Court struck that down too. You're being hostile. You're attacking religion. We saw it in the Boston City Hall case, where they allowed secular flags to fly, or things that were just non-religious, even pride flags to fly on the Boston City Hall, but would not allow a Christian group to fly its flag. That was struck down by the Supreme Court. So anytime you have the state attacking a particular religious group, treating secular conduct better than religious conduct, or more favorable than religious conduct, the Supreme Court has been willing to take up those cases and has ruled in favor of the churches or in favor of those exercising religious liberty. In this particular case, I do think there's a good chance, just like I think there's a good chance that if our Milford Christian case were to be appealed to the Supreme Court, they would take it up. In this case, the Amish case might actually beat us to the Supreme Court on this issue, because they're ahead of us now in line on this issue, and that's fine. If we get a great decision from the Supreme Court from this Amish case, I will be celebrating. I won't be putting them down. I won't be saying we should have been there first. I will be celebrating. I'll be rejoicing. I will be announcing it to all of our subscribers and our followers. And we will then petition the court in our Milford Christian case. We will petition the district court or the Second Circuit, wherever we are at the time the decision is handed down. We will petition them to apply that new Supreme Court precedent and give us a victory. And that would be great. And so that's what I hope happens. We do, if they file something if they do file a cert petition to the U.S. Supreme Court, which I would be surprised if they didn't, we probably will be filing an amicus brief in support of their action, because we do support their case, and we do support their position, and we do think the Supreme Court should overturn the Second Circuit decision in this case, just as we thought that they should overturn it in our case. We're all working together here. We're all supposed to be on the same team, okay? Does that mean we can't call people out when they say something that's wrong, even if it's Dell or Bobby? No, of course not. We can call people out if they're saying something that we know to go against everything that we've seen in our activism, in our research in the past 20 or 30 years. We can certainly call them out. We do it politely. I didn't make accusations, okay? I didn't say they were evil or secretly working for the enemy. In fact, I said the opposite. I said I don't have evidence that they are. But I have to speak the truth. I don't like what they were saying. I was unhappy with what I heard Dell saying. I was unhappy with what I read in Bobby's op-ed in Fox News. I didn't like it, okay? I'm allowed to say I don't like something. That doesn't mean I'm turning against them or something. I just wish more people were genuine like that. I wish more people were willing to just call something out. I know you are, Jen. I know Dawn is, and I know a few other people that are as well. But I just get very, very upset when people are like, oh no, those are the heroes. We can't criticize them. They're heroes. They've always been heroes. They always will be heroes. No matter what they say or do, we must support them. Because then, what does that sound like? That sounds like all the people who just blindly follow the mainstream media and the government when they just say, nope, we must fall. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if people are dying in the streets, we must fall, whatever they say. No, we didn't do it for the government. We didn't do it for the media. And we're not going to do it for anyone who's in power now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's, I hate to see the infighting within the medical freedom community or attacks if
Me
a
too.
case doesn't get ruled the way we'd like it to, and oh, that's a bad case because the judge didn't rule the way we wanted to. The court, I don't know how you do it. I got to give a lot of credit to attorneys and dealing with all the rules of the court and the judge and what you're going to deal with. It's not, this is, you're a parent who has an injured child, and I really respect the work that you have done, and I respect the work that you continue to do after leaving Connecticut and getting out of here. I don't blame you. I'm heading out the door myself. I'm working on it, Brian, hoping that this time next year I'm in a different place. I got plans, okay? So, you know, you got out of Connecticut. You're still working hard for liberty and freedom, working hard even for Connecticut still, and doing really great work. Now, what I think is really unfortunate is people can be really hostile. Oh, you did this. You're blah blah blah, and it really it's stupid. And I think critiques are good. Well, you could have done this or that, you know, whatever. But like just to blast somebody for fighting back and doing it, you know, bringing a case to the court. Look, everybody is going to have a different way to do it. Let everybody try to sue the government and get these rights back. That's a good thing, and we're not guaranteed anything in these courts. And what they're going to do, and we're like what we were just talking about, this massive corrupt, like, bleh, how hard it is to battle. I think the medical freedom movement would be stronger to stand together without this kind of like. You know, we've been dealing with this for years. There's nothing new under
Well,
the sun.
I mean, the funny thing is there were more people turning against us for getting that bad decision than there were people expressing upset or expressing anger against the Second Circuit. The court is the one that made the decision. Again, Brian Festa didn't write any decision that harmed children. Brian Festa didn't issue any order. Okay, that's going to be detrimental to families in Connecticut. And as a matter of fact, Brian Festa wasn't even the one that argued these cases. Yes, I worked on the briefs, but I wasn't even the one in court making the arguments. But people have turned against us, and the people that turn against us, it's just because they're on a different team, right? They're on the team of this other attorney who they think can do a better job. And so they have to pick sides. It's this tribalism that's innate. It seems to be innate in human nature that we have to pick a tribe. We have to stick with one side over the other. We can't support everyone. We have to just support one person or one team. I don't like that. And especially because the criticism that was brought against us was from people that aren't even attorneys. Not to say that you don't know anything if you're not an attorney, but they were making criticisms without any specifics. So it wasn't just that they weren't attorneys. They said, oh, well, it was bad. It was sloppy legal work. But if you called them out on it, okay, what was sloppy about it? What was the bad legal work? What were the arguments they made that they shouldn't have made? They can't answer it. You know what it reminds me of, Jen? It reminds me of people like Peter Hotez and Paul Offit when you ask them to point to a study after they've just said that they're safe and effective. All these shots are safe and effective. They've been proven hundreds or thousands of times to be safe and effective. And when you ask them to point to one study, they can't even name a single study, but we're supposed to just accept it. And these people who have attacked us are doing the same exact thing that their supposed enemies do. They just, because someone told them that it was a sloppy job, they just automatically assume it. And it was so laughable too, because the people who are attorneys, who do have expertise, who have practiced for decades and who have won arguments at the Supreme Court, they were coming to us to tell us how good our case was and they offered their help and they consulted with us and said, listen, we really think you have a good chance of getting the Supreme Court to take it up. You have some great arguments here. We're impressed with your work. The people who actually do have expertise, and some of them work for organizations, I'm not going to say the name, but really famous organizations that have been the leaders that have, over 10 Supreme Court victories, might be over 15 now, Supreme Court victories. Their senior attorneys called us and told us how good our case was. And yeah, I'm supposed to listen to some person, I'll be nice, I won't say the word I wanted to some person in Connecticut that has no legal experience, has never argued a single case, that's telling me my legal work is sloppy and I'm the reason we're losing. It's just so stupid. It's juvenile, it's infantile, really, and it needs to stop. And like I said to the person most recently who attacked us in the comments on Facebook, I said, listen, just, you need to get over yourself. Get behind us or get out of the way, because at the end of the day, we're fighting for the kids. We're going to continue to do it. We're not going to stop, no matter how many times you say it. We're going to continue to fund these lawsuits. We're going to continue to file them. You can't stop us. So get behind us or get out of the way.
Yeah, well, God bless you for that, Brian, because everybody's got an opinion, It's it's pretty wild. So, and it's been a wild ride on this journey for medical freedom. And at the end of the day, it's our children that are on the front lines of this intense battle. And there's so many things now revealed to us post-COVID about the importance of this work for medical freedom. I'm glad you went off there and started We the Patriots and expanded, outside of Connecticut. God bless you for that. Oh my God, don't even get me started. We're in the middle of the legislative season and I'm like, oh, anyway. So
I've been watching the bills. Trust me, I'm still in all the groups. I still see all the things being posted. It's absolute insanity there, and that's why we're going to continue to fight, though, because as these new bills get passed, Jen, and I'm sorry, I do have a hard stop in about 2 minutes. As these bills continue to get passed, we're going to continue to file lawsuits for Connecticut. We're going to keep doing it. So just because I've traveled outside the state and relocated, I should say, it doesn't mean that I've forgotten about Connecticut. Obviously, I still have a lot of people I care about there, including you. For now, you're there. And
right, it's coming.
But we're trying to change it. We're trying to change it for the better because there are some people that are stuck. There are some people that are just in impossible situations. They can't leave. They have to raise their kids there. And I feel for those people because I was one of those parents for a long time.
Yeah. Let's keep up the good fight. I think you do great work, and we got to keep fighting this. And everybody's got an opinion and whatnot, and I hate to see when there's a lot of public attacking or bashing people for trying to fight back for our basic inalienable rights. Criticize the court, pick apart the decision, look at what the court's opinions are, look at the judges that dissented. Let's have a real conversation like grown-ups. Look and pick it apart and say, what did they say? What were their counter arguments? What was their ruling? What does that mean? Where do we go from here? What is the language that they're using? How do we attack this at a different level? And there's so many different things we can get into discussing, and even solutions outside of the government, school system, although this is also coming into the private school system and getting into maybe there's an angle there with that somehow,
Well, interestingly, too, if you read the decision by the Second Circuit and the dissent, none of the judges on the Second Circuit said that our case was sloppy or poorly argued. If they feel that, if a judge sees that, they'll usually call you out. If they think you did sloppy legal work, you didn't do your job as an attorney, you didn't adequately represent your client, if something really is sloppy, they'll say so. None of them thought it was sloppy. And in fact, again, we got one judge who even said he would have ruled in our favor because what Connecticut did in continuing to allow medical exemptions, they were showing that they favored secular conduct over religious conduct. He agreed with us. He thought we had a good legal argument on that point. So, here we go. There's absolutely no evidence that what we did was wrong. Now, are we perfect? Could we do better next time? Sure. We're not perfect, and sure, we could do better. Okay? And we are going to do better because there's other arguments. I wrote a Substack article about this about a week or two ago about this Amish case, and I talked specifically about a strategy that we should try next time. So you can check that out. It's free to law. You can find it on our website at wethepatriotsusa.org or on Substack. And as always, if you support our work or if you need help, come to wethepatriotsusa.org. wethepatriotsusa.com will work now too. We just finally purchased that domain. So you can come and find us there and make a gift, support our efforts, or if you need help, if you're a parent, whether it's with a religious exemption, a medical exemption, or something else, contact us. Email us, and we'll do our best to help you.
It was great talking to you, Brian. I apologize for all the technical snafus.
Sorry.
I will be putting this video into the Substack. I'll link your Substack into the video. Well, I'll probably do that tomorrow because it's at the end of the day. I'll cut out all of that, the problems that we had there. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always look forward to our conversations. Thank you for all the hard work that you do. And that's wethepatriots.org. Usually I have a nice little logo thing there, but my OBS has updated and all my things that I typed in there have to
We
be
the
updated.
Patriots, wethepatriots.com, wethepatriotsusa.org, wethepatriotsusa.com. The one you mentioned, wethepatriots.org, is the one we're still trying to get. We still don't have that.
I'm sorry.
We still don't have that domain. So we do want to get it though. The one we just acquired is actually wethepatriots.com, because so many people forget the USA. So we finally found it, and we did pay for it. We had to pay more money than I would like, but we did finally pay to acquire it, because we were losing a lot of people because they wouldn't put that USA in, and they were trying to find our website. So it was really important and valuable for us to purchase that.
Makes
The one
sense.
we still haven't been able to get wethepatriots.org. That's the one holdup, but we have all the other variations. So hopefully you can find us. And thank you, Jen, and God bless you for everything you do as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. We'll be signing out here. Apologize for the crazy chaos that I had at the beginning of this podcast. Working on perfecting a bunch of things with the live podcast, including bringing guests like Brian in. Thank you for your patience, Brian. And we'll be back live streaming.